We're on our way to the marina to repair a leaky hatch and deadlight. They can be a real pain to repair, but with the right tools, it's not as difficult as you might think. And don't be fooled, it's not a quick repair either. Along the way, I stopped by West Marine to buy a new tube of 3M 4000 and some quickset epoxy. I've been putting off this repair until the weather cooled down and there was no rain in the forecast. It's still pretty warm for November, but otherwise today was nearly perfect.
For the last several months, I've been chasing down different things that are leaking on the deck. Today I'm going to attempt to reseat the front hatch here, which is another item that I'm suspicious that may be leaking. As well as taking a look at this piece here. You can see how the epoxy is already missing. Here's a quick look at the underside before we get started. I don't see any direct evidence that there's leaking coming from there, but it's coming from somewhere, because I will find about an inch of water right here after a heavy rain. I just opened the hatch. So again, I'm just taking a good look. I sounded it. I don't see any structural damage where it's affected the core, but you can take a look. It's been a while since rain. You can see how the water sometimes rests here. That's where it'll find a spot. I've started unscrewing these and realized that it's a nylon washer and a stainless, it's kind of a nut system. Because I saw the same thing from the bottom side, so it looked exactly the same. The other one will have the bolt end. And I've had a little scare that just dropped one and it went bouncing around. Thankfully the tow rail kept it inside kept it on the deck. I have to put a little pressure on this to get it to come up. If not, it just spins on itself. Oh, there goes another one. Boy, that was close. Look at that. It's right there on the deck and the tow rail stopped it. I gotta figure out a better way before I lose one. Even if this is not the deadlight or hatch that's leaking, they still show, here's the evidence that it's worth repairing. Here's the deadlight, up here's the hatch. Look, you can see some old butyl tape and some loose hardware down there. So either way, this needed to be done. Okay, now that one actually I got some rust on the hardware, so that tells me that there's probably a leak right there. Okay, where you at? You're here? You need to move to the other side? Again, I got more debris coming out, so it's damaged. Okay, let's do this one? Yes. Okay. Come to this corner. Now that we got all the nuts and bolts off, we'll see how easy this deadlight comes off. I saw on several other channels and how-tos that people use wedges to get under there and bring it up as one piece, so you don't put stress on any one particular area. So I'm using these towel leveling wedges that I found at Home Depot. Looked on Amazon, and a couple wedges were going to cost me upwards of $20, and I bought this bag of 100 of them for $13. All right, now the work begins. Let's see if we can get this out of here. like that, we broke the seal. Let's take a look. Honestly, I don't see much damage. I don't think this was actually leaking, but again, we saw enough evidence that it needed some repair. I'm not sure why, but they have a expand like a foam here. It's like weather stripping, so that ought to take some work to get off. And then they have a bead of silicone here. I think they were just trying to fill in that gap, possibly because it was holding water in there, and they didn't want that to seep in. But it wasn't doing much of it. It wasn't doing a very good job, because you can see where it broke. So yeah, I got to spend a little bit of time doing some elbow grease. I don't know what this black stuff is, but it's been quite problematic to get it off. It's taken a lot of work. It just crumbles off, and it's got a thread that runs through it. If you know what it is, leave a comment. Let me know. I think this is not part of the original manufacturer specs. I think it's something they did afterwards. And then I'm also trying to get the silicone up, but just very delicately using a razor, a straight edge. And it just comes up in little bitty pieces, and I don't want to dig into the gel coat because this is outside of the area where it'll be sealed. This is something that they put on as precautionary.
This was one of the more tedious parts of this repair. I spent about an hour and a half removing the weather stripping and silicone.
Now I'm using some acetone and a Brillo pad, and we're finally making some progress. I can see the original deck down here. It's looking much better. It's just I got a long way to go. I've been tempted to take shortcuts, but I didn't. I actually got in there and put some elbow grease in. I made some mistakes on the scraping with the paint scraper, and so I got in the corners and I didn't realize I was catching the actual deck itself, so I left some gouges. Not too concerned about it because the silicone is going to cover that up, but you know, hindsight, I would have did a better job to protect it. So this is what this side looks like. Both sides are done. So now I'm deciding if I actually want to drill those out, put epoxy, and then come back tomorrow and do it. It wasn't leaking, so I'm not too concerned about it. And if I was going to have this boat for many years to come, I would certainly drill those holes out larger, fill it with epoxy, and then re-drill them. I'm just not sure if that's what I'm going to do tonight. I'll make the decision here shortly. To keep everything out of the bay, I've been just shoving the debris down here in the hole, so you can see I got quite a mess to clean up. I don't have a lot of work to do in the cabin here. Most of it was all on the deck, so this shouldn't take but about 30 minutes to get cleaned up and prepped.
I thought this part would be easy, but the rust stains were stubborn and it took about 45 minutes to prep the interior surface. Well, it was not necessary. I went ahead and cleaned up the old washers and bolt left behind some corrosion and what looked like rust. It was a lot more work than I thought. And then a couple times I about gave up because it was unnecessary, but I'm glad I did it now because it looks a lot better. Now I have the task of cleaning up the old silicone and maybe butyl tape or whatever they were using off of the bolts. This is from the bottom side, and this is what you see on the top side. Each one on the top side, they have a nylon washer. You see there's the washers, the nylon washers on this. So let me get these all cleaned up. Now I'm just removing the last bit of silicone that's on the edges and the bolt holes. This is going pretty quick. I'm getting the big stuff off with my hand, just rubbing it off, and I'll come through with a rag and some light solvent to see if I can get it nice and clean before I get the surface prepped before we remount it. Put the first layer down, and I realize I do not have a steady hand, so it looks pretty atrocious, but I just want to get a good bead. I'm filling in the spots where I don't think it's thick enough right now without making too big of a mess, and I'm not being successful. Anyways, that's a decent bead. I'll lay it down now and see what it looks like.
Here's where the project got complicated. I tested the fit before applying the sealant, but after bedding the deadlight, the holes were not aligning. Colleen worked from the bottom and we carefully lifted and turned the deadlight around, but the holes still did not line up. Turns out, we started at the one hole which appears to have been misdrilled previously, so that threw off the bolt pattern. For a second time, we lifted and reseated the deadlight, but not before we incidentally smeared the sealant all over the deck, the deadlight, and even ourselves. Here I'm cleaning up the mess I made and filling in the gap for added protection. This is a top-down view of the final results. It's far from perfect, but I'm confident it's not going to leak. I didn't have time to work on the hatch this time, but it's next on the list. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week.